Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'll guide you through the process of calculating a weighted average, a useful tool for analyzing data that involves different weights for each dataset. Here I have a set of data for the marks scored by a class of 100 students in one course. So here I have categorized the marks scored into 5 different categories. Out of the 100 students, 80 students have scored 35 marks and 10 students 40 marks, and likewise, the rest of the students also scored different marks. So, totally, we have 5 different groups. Now, to find out the average marks scored by the class of 100 students, we cannot take the average of these 5 marks. So, that will not give the correct average because 80 students have scored 35 marks. If you take the average, you will get 59. If you are getting simple average of these 5 marks, you are getting 59. But the actual process of getting the average of the marks in the class is weighted average. In calculating the weighted average, you have to take into consideration of the frequency of the marks scored by the students. So 35 marks is scored by 80 students. So to calculate the total marks scored by 80 students, you have to take 80 into 35. So in calculating the total marks, 80 into 35 plus 10 into 40, because 10 students have scored 40 marks, the total marks scored by 10 students is 10 into 40. Similarly, you have to take the product of this column with the corresponding elements of the marks. So you should take the product of the elements of this column with the corresponding elements of the marks column. So that summation will give the total marks. That is the numerator of this formula. So total marks is calculated like this, divided by number of students. Number of students is totally 100. So by adding this, we will get 100. So the total marks scored divided by the number of students, that will give the weighted average. So here the frequency has to be considered. If it is only 5 students, one student has scored 35 and another student 40, like that, then you can take average, that is adding all this divided by 5. But this 35 is scored by 80 students, so you have to take this also into consideration in calculating the average. So that is weighted average. To calculate the numerator of this formula, you have a single function in Excel which is called sum product. So sum product will calculate like this. If you are specifying two arrays like this, number of students and marks scored, it will calculate sum of the products of elements of one array with the corresponding elements of another array. So to calculate that, you can use equal to sum product. The function is sum product. If you type sum, it will give the pull down menu. You will get the formula sum product. Select it. Select the first array. First array is a frequency. So put a comma. Then select the second array. After selecting the second array, close the bracket. So this will give the numerator of this. That is this summation divided by total students. To calculate the total students, we can go for sum. Select sum of the number of students, and then close the bracket, enter. So that will give the weighted average. This is the weighted average marks for the entire class. So when you are taking average of these marks, it's showing 59. It is not the true average because majority of students have scored 35. So this will have a major impact on the average. Only 2 students have scored 90. You cannot give equal importance for all these marks because 80 students have scored 35. So the average should go nearer to that. I'll give another example to calculate the weighted average. So here I have the deposit made by a person in 3 different banks. He is having 1 lakh rupee and he has deposited 50,000 in one bank with an interest rate of 10%, and 30,000 he has deposited with 8% interest rate. The rest he has deposited for 6%. Now if you go for simple average, you will get 8%. So 8% is a simple average. Just take average of these 3 interest rate the average interest rate earned by him is 8% for this 1 lakh rupee. But actual interest rate can be different from this. It can be greater than or less than this, depending on the weightage of amount deposited. So it's not the frequency. Now this is the weight. So more amount is deposited with the 10% interest. Instead of frequency, here you have the quantity of amount deposited. That will give the weightage. So here 50,000 is deposited with the 10% interest rate. So this unequal amount deposited with a different interest rate will give different average than simple average. If equal amounts are deposited in three different banks, each has equal weightage, and you could have taken a simple average. But in this case, you need to consider the amount deposited. So weighted average will give the average rate of interest. So to find out the average rate of interest, you can go for the formula sum product equal to, you can type sum, you can select sum product. You have to select the first array, then comma, select the second array, close the bracket, divided by sum, select sum, then select the total amount deposited, close the bracket, press enter. So this will give the average rate of interest. So 1 lakh amount, if you calculate 8.6%, that will be the total interest for this amount with unequal rate of interest. So if you calculate 50,000 10% interest, then 30,000 8% interest, and 20,000 6% interest. And if you calculate the total interest rate, it will be equal to the interest earned by him for 1 lakh at the rate of 8.6%. So he is getting a little higher interest rate than these values because major amount is deposited with a higher interest rate. So that's why he is getting more interest rate than simple average. This is how you calculate the weighted average. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.